He was drawn into international diplomacy when he was just 16, accompanying his mother on a crucial mission to China.
It was extremely important for the Philippines at that time to be able to lay down the beginnings of our relationship.
His country is a key ally of the United States, but he refuses to fall back into the Cold War formula where one has to take sides.
The future of the Asia-Pacific region must be decided by the Asia-Pacific region, not anyone else.
In this episode of Leaders Talk, we meet Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, President of the Philippines.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers in WANG GUAN in Beijing. To say our guest today is no stranger to China is a big understatement. At 16 years young, he came to China with his mom, then First Lady of the Philippines, and met with the Chinese leader Mao Zedong. That trip helped establish diplomatic relations between China and the Philippines. Now, half a century later, the man returned to Beijing as his country's head of state. Our guest today is Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, the President of the Philippines. So President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, welcome to Leaders Talk on CMG. It's an honor.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me. Yes.
You first came to China as a
16 years old.
16 years old with your mom Imelda, and met with Chinese leaders. Your father was president, of course, back then. If you think about it, half a century has gone by since that trip. Now returning as president yourself back to the city, what kind of memories and emotions are there?
I mean, it's all very clear in my mind. I will never forget it. How we first arrived in China, when we first got the invitation from then Prime Minister Zhou Enlai. And we first got the invitation and we were planning. And we did not know what to expect, because in 1974, there was very little news coming out of China. And the only news we had was from the Western world. I remember very clearly, we were so curious when the plane was landing. We were all looking out and seeing what are we going. And at the end of the trip, they said, they're just like us. There's no difference. We were able to see many places. Actually ended up meeting with the chairman. I remember very clearly the chairman was very gracious. And my mother was saying, you're chairman, you're a great leader. He said, no, I'm a teacher. I'm only a teacher. And she said, also me. When I was younger, I teach little children. And he said, that's why we're the same. That's why and they got along very well from that point on. So he was. At that time, he needed help to walk already, but his mind was very clear. So it was remarkable and an amazing visit. And my mother loves to tell the story because the chairman said, started coughing, clearing his throat. And my mother took out some of her own throat medicine and gave it to the chairman. And I was kicking under the table. Said, don't give him medicine. It might be not good for him. Maybe he's taking other medicine. No. And he took it. And he took a cough drop. And he took it. And he said, thank you. He was very gracious. As a 16-year-old, I could not believe, I still can't believe that I was lucky enough to be in the same room as Chairman Mao Zedong. I can never ever forget what a historic and important moment it was.
Your mom was very emotional during that visit. I saw the footages of your mom wiping her tears.
Yes, because it was extremely important for the Philippines at that time. The graciousness of the invitation of Premier Zhou Enlai and the hospitality with which we were received, and to finally meet with the chairman, this great leader who we only knew from books and news reports, to finally be able to meet him, and most importantly, to be able to lay down the beginnings of our relationship was something that was overwhelming.
So in a way, Mr. President, you were one of the trailblazers of Sino-Philippines relations. Even at 16 years young, What kind of a historical lens does that give you to look at China-Philippines relations throughout the decades?
Well, first of all, it is one of the most important parts of that experience is to watch China since 1974 until now 2023, and the remarkable progress that China has gone through, and the leadership of the party, of your presidents, that have taken China from what it was in 1974. Which is still really very much a rural country, into what China is now, which is an economic powerhouse in the world, has been remarkable. And to have been for the Philippines to have been part of that evolution, because we had already our diplomatic relations, and we were continuing to consult with each other on many levels already, beyond the diplomatic level. Has been something that I have always watched with great interest, for the simple reason that I want to know what happened to the beginnings that we laid down in 1974. And I can only say that it has grown by leaps and bounds, and I do not see how it will slow down. I think the only way forward is to increase and strengthen and deepen that relationship between our two countries.
Marcos' trip to China with his mother when he was a teenager sowed the seeds of what is now a half-century diplomatic relationship between China and the Philippines. In June 2022, shortly after taking office, Marcos called China the most powerful partner of the Philippines. That got some Western analysts vigilant. When the two presidents met in November 2022, President Xi Jinping said China prioritizes advancing the cooperation with the Philippines, and Marcos reciprocated by saying that Manila is committed to working through differences with Beijing and making the relationship stronger.
Your administration said your visit will set a tone for China-Philippines relations in the next 5-6 years. What kind of tone do you think has been set? What is the most important outcome of your trip?
Well, of course, we are now, all of us, China included, every country in the world is emerging from the pandemic economy. And I think the partnerships that we make as a country, both China, both the Philippines, and the other countries, the partnerships we'll make are the ones that will make us stable in this world now that is a little bit confusing. And so that I think gives us further opportunities to strengthen our relationship. And I think what difficulties there might be present with the territorial claims in the South China Sea, I think we are good friends, China and the Philippines. And these things happen between even good friends. But good friends stay good friends, even if we have these problems. And good friends talk about the problems and resolve them in a nice and equitable, and to find a way that is mutually beneficial to both countries. And that's the way I see it is going. And the groundwork, the foundation that was laid since 1974, and subsequently with my father coming, and the actual formalization of diplomatic relations. I think to see how the groundwork that laid down is a very solid foundation on which we continue to build. And that's, I think, the future for the Philippines and China.
You're talking about the South China Sea has long been a sticking point in bilateral relations, but you said repeatedly that they should not define our relationship. No. What is the latest regarding bilateral consultation on maritime disputes?
Well, right now we have we constantly have a communication, but it is not so formalized. And that's perhaps one of the things that I would like to propose in this trip to your president, that we raise the level of communications. Both sides have a direct conversation and a direct link to their presidents, my officials to me, and Chinese officials to the President Xi. And that way, we can avoid any possible misunderstandings, any possible mistakes. It is to make sure that not to aggravate the situation, but to calm things down.
How confident are you that the two countries can reach an agreement on maritime joint exploration and disputes?
I feel confident, as I said, the foundations that we have laid, because it is not the only discussion that China and the Philippines are having. We talk on very many bases. We talk on the GTG, government-to-government basis. We talk on the on private sector basis. We talk on PPP basis. All of these things. Even we have educational exchanges, with cultural exchanges. So those I think help solidify the relationship, and that's why I do not think that any difficulties will change, because those other areas will not change. They continue to grow stronger. They continue to become more important to our two countries, and because of that, I feel very confident that we will be able to move forward. Now, as you say, well, there are two ways of saying the expression: God is in the details, or the devil is in the details. But we have many people who are working very hard to try and make this a success. I understand that that applies also to the Chinese side, and I think there's a good desire from both sides to make it succeed. So, if the two sides are determined and committed to the success of that project, of that program, then we will find a way. I'm confident.
Yeah, you talk about the importance of sticking with bilateral consultations. You're not a big fan of outside intervention, and you said, and I quote, the problems are with us and China. If the Americans come in, it is bound to fail. Can you elaborate your thinkings behind the statement?
Well, I said that at the point where we were having discussions with China, those in two previous administrations, and it was the Americans offered to be the third party between China and the Philippines. And I said, that's not going to succeed because you're a party in interest. It has to be between the Philippines and China. It can involve ASEAN because ASEAN, of course, is part. And so, but it has to be someone from the region who has an interest in Asia Pacific, and I think that statement has now evolved into the thinking that the future of the Asia Pacific region must be decided by the Asia Pacific region, not anyone else.
Talking about geopolitics, Mr. President, there have been a number of Washington-led initiatives which Beijing considers thinly veiled China containment institutions, such as IPAF on the economic side and AUKUS and Quad on the security side. How necessary do you consider these institutions in this day and age?
Well, it's, I guess, a response from the Americans for what they see. The Philippines, again, has a very simple foreign policy. It's a foreign policy that commits itself to peace, and that is guided by the national interest. And that national interest dictates that we will not allow ourselves to be drawn back into the old Cold War formula, where one has to take sides. The only side I'm on is the Philippine side. Very simple, and I think that is a good guide.
During their meeting in Beijing, the two sides issued a joint declaration where 14 agreements were signed. They cover agriculture, energy, infrastructure, and security. The two sides decided to set up a higher-level consultation mechanism to resolve their differences in the South China Sea and to discuss ways to jointly explore maritime resources, including natural gas and oil. The state visit by Marcos also highlighted the development synergy between Beijing and Manila, namely China's Belt and Road Initiative and the Philippines' Build More Better program.
You will have met President Xi twice. What kind of a leader do you think he is?
Well, clearly he is a very strong, stabilizing leader. It was welcome news for us to hear that during the 20th Party Congress that he was re-elected as president, and that will bring stability to China, which will bring stability to the rest of the region. And that's why I think that there is much that we can do working together in the future.
There could be a number of deliverables from your trip. Around a dozen agreements are expected to be signed between China and the Philippines. How important are they, Mr. President? And in what ways do you expect them to translate into tangible benefits for everyday people on both sides?
It will translate into benefits for everyday people for the simple reason that we have in the Philippines identified certain areas that are prioritized for development and for our transformation of our economy, for this new economy, that's the post-pandemic economy. And so this is, I think, something that I believe we will be able to strengthen and to make make it even more rapid in terms of the progress, because of the partnerships that we will sign during this trip are to do with agriculture, to do with energy, renewable and traditional, to do with tourism, to do with the continuing investment of China in the Philippines in many areas, in infrastructure, which already China has been very heavily involved in the Philippines, and trade. So all of these are extremely important for all our countries at this point, for all countries. As I said, we try to navigate this rather difficult situation that we are facing around the world. Agriculture has become a high priority for the simple reason that the crisis in food supply and food prices has hit us very hard. It's a surprise still, I think, to many of us that a war very far away, halfway around the world, will affect food prices and food supply in a place like the Philippines. And China has already been of assistance to us because we have actually had many agricultural exchanges. And I remember many years ago, in the time of President Estrada, we were the only recipient of the rice hybrid.
Hybrid rice, yeah.
Yes, that was brought to the Philippines. It was actually tested. I was governor of the province then.
How are they helping the Philippines?
In the northern part of the Philippines. And we tested the hybrid rice, and the yields were very high. So we've been doing this for a long time. But there is new technology, there are new techniques, there are new strategies, there are new varieties.
Many people don't know this, but Mr. President, you're also the Minister of Agriculture.
Yes.
It's quite a juggle.
Well, it is. But I felt it was necessary because the situation in the Philippines was quite severe. And I thought, since we had to move very quickly, I thought that should be a priority. And having the president also carry the title and position of agriculture would make things go much quicker. Because I thought, if I put the secretary there, who is the secretary that can really get things going? And I said, the president is the only person in government that nobody can say no to. So I will be the secretary, and I will make sure that and we have made some very serious progress. We were very worried that at the end of last year, there would be some severe shortages in terms of food supply, and we were very worried about the increase in prices. And we've been able to lessen that. There's still a very high inflation rate, but much of that is imported, and so we're trying to reduce our importation. So all of these things have to be done around the agricultural sector. But then the agricultural sector is not farmers planting things in the crops into the ground. Agriculture sector includes also fisheries, includes also livestock growing. And so all of these have to be put together, and we have to create a support chain so that our farmers, our livestock growers, all of them, our fisher folk, are able to adjust as well, to bring higher production, so we do not no longer need to import food.
You have many other economic initiatives, including an infrastructure program called Build Better More. How do you see the synergy between your infrastructure program and China's Belt and Road Initiative?
There are many areas actually which are in consonance that would be very important to continue to explore. The Build Better More program is really the expansion of the infrastructure program of my predecessor. And not only did we continue all that was started in the previous administration, in the Build program, we have expanded it further. And China has been our partner in that. It's become terribly, terribly important to us. We cannot keep thinking in terms of surviving. That mindset should be disposed of that already. That was for the pandemic. All we wanted to do was survive. But the pandemic is more manageable now. So I think it's time to start thinking about how we flourish, how we become bigger, how we become better, how we become more efficient. Again, the subject is unavoidable. How do we handle climate change? Climate change keeps coming up because, especially in ASEAN, in APEC, the subject keeps coming up because we are the most affected. The Philippines itself is considered one of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable countries for the effects of climate change. It will affect our tourism. It will affect our building infrastructure. It will affect our education. It will affect everything is affected. It will affect the way we run our government and how we will have to evolve the government. So all of these elements seem to become more cohesive, not in a good way, but they've come together, and we have to deal with it in a holistic manner.
One last question. A lot of Chinese are craving for their first overseas trips, and now that we're moving beyond COVID, as president, maybe you can give them some tips on why Philippines.
We have been hosting you. Before the pandemic began, there were about 1.5 million Chinese who would come to visit the Philippines. And we hope that in the future you will come and visit us again, and even bigger numbers, as we miss you, and we think that you come to the Philippines, that you will again enjoy the beauty of our country, and much more importantly, the kindness and hospitality of our people.
President Bongbong Marcos, welcome back to China, and thank you for this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Regarding the triangular relationship between China, the U.S., and the Philippines, President Marcos said he's not a big fan of us versus them sort of geopolitics, where smaller countries were forced to pick sides. But with Washington's insistence on great power competition, Manila is walking a very fine line. Thank you for watching this episode of Leaders Talk. I'll see you again next time.